Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of For the Republic. It's your boy, Louis Valentine, here with my very good friend, Garandeep. Katie, what's up?
Yo, how's it going?
All right, I'm doing all right. We got a lot of topics today to discuss. Among them is Jordan Neely and what happened in the New York City subway this week. Also, we got some news on Ukraine. We're going to talk about the southern border, among other topics. Your boy, Richard Epstein, your best friend. And let's get right into it, Garandeep. Thoughts? Anything you want to say before we get into the Jordan Neely stuff?
Well, before that, you said Richard Epstein.
That's not his name. Oh yeah, Jeffrey Epstein. Whatever the hell his name is. He's dead anyway. It doesn't matter. Jeffrey, Kevin
Uh,
Crowder.
what a Sunday afternoon.
Well,
What were you asking me?
any thoughts on the Jordan Neely? But I'm gonna pull the video up. So I don't know. You want to watch the video? Or you want to get your
Yeah, let's
thoughts?
watch the video first, and then
Watch the video. All right.
we'll discuss it. Got my allergies.
All right. Let's start from the beginning. I'm gonna mute this just because nobody wants to hear what's actually being said. All right. Well.
Jeez.
All right. Here it is.
So well, he's trying to break out of it.
Well, yeah, that's what it looks like. And then now, like this guy, the guy on the guy who's standing up. I don't know what the hell he's doing. He's just holding that guy's arm and then just standing there.
Calm
The
down,
Marine
man,
is,
calm down.
yeah, this is the Marine that they now want to put in jail. And people afraid there's like a black dude there who's also he's not trying to free the guy. He's trying to keep him tied up. Now, the witnesses say that he was being overly aggressive and violently threatening people on the trains. So I'm not going to take that with a grain of salt or anything. I'll believe it. But that's the overview of the video. Now, I'll just start with this. So Jordan Neely, he was 30 years old. He's kind of typical, as in what you hear nowadays whenever there's like these racial issues.
Okay.
One, he's black, and then two, typical. He's not unknown to the police. So the police, he has a record. He's been arrested. If you want to pull up his rap sheet, I think he was arrested about 44 times, and I think he still had an active case against him, which is probably now dismissed because he's dead. And
Oh, so he had a warrant.
I think he had a warrant, or he was gonna go to court or something like that. So he had an active case, I think, being tried at the moment. I mean, he was committing crimes until 2022. I think that's the latest record of his history with the with justice system. He kidnapped. I remember in 2015. I think he kidnapped a 7-year-old girl. I think he also he I think punched an old man like in his 60s, and I think just recently he hit a 67-year-old woman while she was
Oh
in
yeah,
the
I see.
subway, and it broke her. I think it broke her labrum. I think she like had to go to the hospital. And so this isn't abnormal. This is typical. What's abnormal and very rare is the amount of interracial crime, despite what they say on the left. It is the left. The left, the Democratic Party, is the party of interracial warmongering. They're like hawks. They're like the war hawks, but of race wars. They want one pretty much. They keep inciting stuff. And so we're not saying this to justify it because nobody should be murdered, but to say that this was an innocent man who was taking the subway and had nothing wrong with him, and the only crime in their eyes was that he was black and that made him a victim. And then to say that the 24-year-old Marine, well, do you have his name? I forget his name, but they
I
would
believe his name is Daniel Penny. I believe
Daniel Petty,
Penny.
Daniel Penny. Well, Daniel Penny wasn't like what they like to say, wasn't a 24-year-old white Marine veteran, a stereotype they have, and he wasn't going down to the subway saying, "Oh, today's a great day to go down to the subway and kill and hunt some black guys." That's not what he was doing. He was taking the subway like everyone in New York City. And as people who go or have worked in New York City, I remember when I worked in New York City, I remember taking the subway. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. I've even seen violent stuff. But you know why it's not talked about? Because it's mostly black on black, or Hispanic on black, or mostly black on black, or Hispanic on black, not white against black. That's not what it is. But this is already characterized on the internet as this is another sign of anti-black racism. That this crime is. It's like, no, that's ridiculous. Because there's first of all, there's a black man there restraining not Penny, he's restraining Jordan Neely. Because witnesses said, and by the way, when the New York Times says witnesses and doesn't classify the witnesses, okay, that's how you already know that it wasn't white people. Because I bet you if it was only white people saying that he was being violent, and he was being violent, he was disturbing the peace, they would have wrote white people on the train said he was disturbing the peace. No, they said witnesses. So that means
Yeah,
everybody on that train. And by the way, if you've ever taken a train in New York City, it's not a lot of white people on it. Especially if you're taking the F train to Brooklyn or Queens or the Bronx. There's not a lot of white people on it.
I've said this before on the last video with the we were talking about the I think the 17-year-old kid who was shot by a white man.
Yeah, Ralph, y'all.
Yeah, and I mentioned it before. You guys are falling for it. The whole media hypocrisy and how the politicians are trying to push it. They're really trying to push it so hard. They're trying to create this division right here. Um, I remember watching a clip yesterday. A bunch of protesters were in the subway, literally just standing right on the fucking tracks, and the train would stop completely. And then there was another instance where protesters were blocking the door, where people weren't able to get out. You know,
Yeah.
they were blocking the door, and then they were telling another black man, "Oh, you can't get out. You can't get out. We're right here protesting for Jordan Neely." And then another person was telling him, "Yo, they're lynching us. They're lynching us." If you guys are any like UFC like fans or anything, if they do a chokehold, is that what we're gonna call it now? Are we gonna call it lynching? Oh my God, he's lynching him! He's lynching him! It's so dumb.
Well, I mean, you're not going to be allowed to have. You can't use a chokehold on a black person. If your opponent's black, you can't chokehold them.
Imagine
Even if you're black.
Imagine Joe Rogan or Daniel Cormier just like screaming on a commentary like, "Oh, he's lynching him! He's lynching him! He's about to win! He's about to win!" Like, I don't know. It's so dumb. But I've said it before. You guys are like literally falling for this shit again.
No, yeah, it's totally. Well, it's all demagoguery. They're trying. Remember, this isn't a small community movement. This is a nationwide ideological movement based in anti-white sentiment. Remember, they're not pointing this out. If Daniel Penny is Daniel Pena and he's a Dominican who lives in Jackson Heights, they're not throwing this out in the news. They're not because it doesn't play into anything. Remember, Jordan Zimmerman, I believe, was like raised in California, but I think his mother was Peruvian or Ecuadorian. And I think his last name was Jorge. I think it was Pena too, or was it something like that? He could have, if he had come out and said, "I'm not Jordan Zimmerman. My name is Jorge Pena. My name is Jorge, whatever it is, Nieves." Do you think the media would have continued? No, they wouldn't have. Barack Obama would have come out there and said, "What's his name? I just forgot what the kid's name is." But remember, he said, "That's like the black son I never had." Remember, he said, "That's the son I never had." What president says that? No president says that. I've never heard a president come out and say. Bill Clinton never went out and said that O.J. Simpson's wife was uh, the second daughter he never had. But we never had anybody. We've never had rhetoric like that. But Obama's a discussion for another day. But this is those are like the beginnings of what's now happened nationwide. That it's all based in pretty much flaming racial tensions between groups that don't need to have. Because if you look at the data, remember, 90% of the crime that happens on black people is done by black people, unfortunately young and male. 13% of the population commits 60% of the crimes, but it's really 6%, which is half of that. The black men are committing the majority of those crimes, still over 50%. That's the problem. But you can't point that out because if you point that out, you're racist. Remember, Vivek Ramaswamy pretty much pointed out that you can't feel that you're being oppressed. And what did Don Lemon say to him? He said, "Well, you're not black." But I've seen Indian people, I've seen Pakistanis, I've seen Indian people that are blacker than Don Lemon. Remember, remember, I think we were going to a train station in Edison, and I remember I was in a different car, and I told you guys I saw a black Indian guy with a pink turban. It was a funny sight. I remember telling you guys, but he's blacker than Barack Obama.
Why is that
He's
a funny
blacker
sight?
Huh?
Why is that a funny
It was
sight?
ironic. It was funny. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
No, it does matter. It does matter. What are you trying to say?
It was hilarious to see that. It was a bright pink turban, and this dude was blacker than Don Lemon. But you see the point? That the point is, you can't say that. Vivek Ramaswamy is black. He's darker than Don Lemon, but Don Lemon says, "Oh, you're not black, so you can't say that." So, well, what is he then? It's like What does that mean? So, if you're telling me that skin color, remember the left said this. Demography is destined. So that's why they get mad when people call out the fact that there's a great replacement theory because they say that that's racist, but they're pretty much leading to events like this. They stoke racial tensions like this that lead people to think that that theory is real.
Yeah.
Remember, that's what they're doing. Where black people are protected, you can't criticize. He's not different. I mean, he was a drug addict. He was mentally ill, but now they're saying that he was only mentally ill because his father was assassinated, was murdered. Okay, that's and by the way, now you can't criticize him because not only is he black, but now his father was murdered and he was raised. Oh, and I think no, his mother was murdered,
No,
was it?
yeah, no, yeah. His mother was
His mother
murdered
was
when he
murdered.
was 14.
Anyways, and so now you can't criticize that because if you're that, you're not only racist, but you're also heartless. That's bullshit. And then what else?
They kind of did the same thing with. Do you remember the kid's name who did the school shooting in Florida? I think it was Parkland. What was his name? Nicholas, something like that.
Oh yeah, Nicholas. Yeah. He was just. I think he was
I
Hispanic
remember.
American. I don't think he's white.
I don't know if he was
He had a
Hispanic.
Hispanic last name, I think.
I'm not too sure, but I remember reading some comments, and I remember someone said that he was going through a lot of mental situations, especially when his
They
mother
didn't
was not
care.
around, but they didn't care at all.
No, yeah,
So
his
it's
last
like,
name
what's
is
the
Nicholas
difference with this
Cruz.
one? Like now
His
we're
last name is Nicholas Cruz.
Nicholas Cruz. There you go.
So that's pretty much like a Cuban last name, probably. He's in the Parkland area. That's Fort Lauderdale,
And
Broward County area,
and
most likely.
you can easily tell that Nicholas was not in his head at
No,
all.
he's not
This
in his
dude
head.
is
But because he
insanely
has white
mental.
skin, that privilege, that excuse is taken. He's not giving that excuse. Remember, because he's white.
So yeah, exactly. Now they're trying to point this on Jordan Neely that he's going through a
Yeah.
lot mentally. He all he asked was food and water. It's like how
No.
do we know that? All we saw was a
But the
video of
witnesses
him being
haven't said.
choked.
But
That's it.
witnesses are saying that he's not. Witnesses are saying that no, he was violent. That's what the
Yeah,
family
yeah,
says.
exactly. Yeah.
And so, but remember, this is the whole point. They're setting this. You can't criticize black people. You can't say anything bad to them. You can't tell them that they're wrong. You can't criticize their culture. You can't criticize the way they dress, the way they speak. You can't criticize anything about anybody. But they can come out and say that white people are horrible and I don't want to be around any white people. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. But they want to be able to date white girls and white women. The men do. That's what they want. So it's a whole hypocrisy because it's all sophistry. They're not serious about what they want. They're not serious. They're only doing this for power. Because at the end of the day, their ideology is a conduit for them to obtain more power. Because that's what they want. Like what they have now. What they want is to be able to pretty much demonize the military. Well, they want so that it's not as white as it is before, because that's what they hate. Even if that costs us our lethality, especially in a time where we need a strong military because of the threats outside of us. But they don't care
Yeah.
about that because
No.
that's not diverse. It's not diverse enough. So what are they doing? And this is, by the way, a twofold attack because the fact that Daniel Penny is white, he's also a Marine, and the same congresswoman in New York City, remember AOC, like I think it was about 1 or 2 weeks ago, was pretty much pissed off that she was like, "How dare somebody say that I was advocating for military recruitment?" When in the world would I would have never expected I would have thought of it would happen, but I've never expected it to actually happen. That a sitting member of Congress of the U.S. government, sworn to the Constitution, would say, "I hate our military and I would never help people recruit to it," especially now when we need people
When
to
we
join
needed the
because the
most.
recruiting
Yep.
numbers are so low.
Yep.
But because it's white and the military is predominantly white, and by the way, this fact that they want to ignore in all of the wars we have, the predominant death. The white people die more in our wars than any other group. Black people think that they're the ones being oppressed because they set up an army recruitment center in a black community. Now they're saying it's the government that wants to kill us. Yeah, but who's dying in our wars, dumbass? White people are, for the most part, not for a little margin, a huge margin. And they're the ones going to wars. They're the ones going to Iraq, Afghanistan. They're the ones dying there. But no, that you don't like that because they're white. It's just a stereotype. That's what they're doing. It's really disturbing talk. It's really disturbing because we should remember, and we do know where this ends up. You end up like Yugoslavia. You end up like Rwanda. You end up like a lot of other disturbing countries that have had horrible things happen to them.
Yeah.
People forget genocides happened. People love Hotel Rwanda because it's Africans and they love Africans until they actually have to put money down or do something for them. But when they're in conversationally, they love Africa. Remember what happened in that movie? There was a genocide, a literal genocide, because one group of people who were of a different ethnicity or race thought that the other one deserved to die because they were inferiors. Also, what happened in Yugoslavia? All these different groups put together hated each other, where there was racial crimes. Racial crimes. They were white, but they were different ethnicities. Same thing here. That's what you're doing here. We know where this ends, but they think this is just a game, but it's not. It's not a game.
So apparently, according to a New York Post, a Manhattan grand jury could be convened as early as next week to determine whether to indict Penny.
Yeah, he's already released a statement. I think as of today or last night, pretty much saying that
Yeah.
what's his face, Peely was a threat to people, and you know, look, I think I discussed with you off air, but this is a problem that we now have, especially now since it's another multifaceted of the whole, I guess, national problem that we have. Whereas he's not going to have a he's not going to have a fair trial
Oh no,
because
I can
a
already see
leftist
that
DA,
now.
no, a leftist DA is not going to put a jury with people that are going to be sympathetic to him. So the DA or whoever's the prosecutor is going to say, I want a jury who's going to indict this man for a crime, for saying, well, murder. Because they don't want any more people getting away. Remember, what's his face? The kid in Wisconsin who had the self-defense case.
Uh
Kyle Rittenhouse.
there you go. I keep forgetting the names. God damn it.
Remember, he didn't kill black people. He shot people in self-defense at a protest for a black man who, by the way, fit the same character. He had a history with the police. He was a criminal. I think he'd gone to jail before. He had warrants for his arrest. And at the time where he got shot, what was he doing? He was, I think, assaulting a woman. And then that woman, who's also a minority, got assaulted by BLM because they said, "How dare you call the police on a black man?"
Yeah,
That was
I
also
think
hilarious.
I think she called because
This isn't new. This is all a trend. It's typical. That's why I said it's typical.
yeah.
This is what happened. George Floyd was a criminal. But what they use is because they're demagogues and they're sophists and they don't have any rational thought left in them, and they're not capable of that because they're ideologically incompetent and intellectually retarded. What do? They use, oh, well, Ahmaud Arbery was killed by 3 white people in vigilante justice. Okay, well, name me another one. Because for one, I can name you 10 or 50, or even worse, I can name you thousands of black people killed because of black people, but you don't really care about them. What you care about is black people that have criminal histories, who aren't the best of the best, who aren't even decent people, and then you make them martyrs. So now Jordan Neely is going to be remembered, but he's going to remember for the wrong reasons. He's not going to be remembered because he was a poor soul that could have been helped out in his life, but the black community abandoned him and failed him too.
Yeah, so whose fault was
But he's going
that?
to be remembered he's going to be a martyr now because he was killed in the name of anti-black racism. That's why he's going to be remembered, even though that has nothing to do with this. Because that's what they do. Remember, what they always tell you, George Floyd was killed by police because he was black, not because he had done something. They tell you what happened in Ferguson was because the guy was black, not because he went to an Indian guy's convenience store, stole, and then his groups of people, when the police was called on them, came back and burned the place down. And I think they even assaulted and tried. I think they might have killed that man who owned the convenience store back in Ferguson.
No,
But that guy's a
I don't
victim.
know. I don't know if he killed him. No, I don't think he did.
But that guy's a victim, though.
He did hurt him though. He did hurt him though.
He did. Yeah, he was injured. I think. Yeah, I don't know if he died or not. But his convenience store was burned down in an act of revenge because he said that the Indian man called him because he was racist. No, it's because he committed a crime. So that's the
Trying to call
trend.
us
People
racist,
need to realize the
motherfuckers.
trend. People need to realize this trend. It's not a laughing matter anymore. It's that black criminals in particular, are a protected class in America. They can do nothing wrong, and if you criticize them, you're racist. And if you're Hispanic, Black, Asian, and you're not white, and you try to defend the people that are actually innocent here, and actually logically criticize the fact that these people were criminals, what is told? What you get attacked, you get called an Uncle Tom, you get called a shill, you get called a bunch of names, even though that has nothing to do with it.
Oh yeah, it was burned down. Oh wow.
Yeah, it was burned down. The whole town was burned down.
Yeah, but nothing being said about the store owner died off of it.
I
Something
think
like
the
that.
store owner was like assaulted or something.
He was assaulted. Yes.
Yeah, he was assaulted. No, but that's the whole trend. That's just a little tidbit, but this is a trend that's been going on for years now. People need to understand this isn't new. This has been happening for a while now.
Yeah, it's not new, but I think after the whole George Floyd, I feel like a lot of people have waken up to this. I don't think a lot of them will fall for it that easily. Sadly, with the protesters in New York, they fell for it once again.
Well,
Um,
because New York is a cesspool. Remember, that's like their little headquarters.
yeah,
Cities are always have always been left leaning like this. They're always left leaning. They tend to be like that. But these people, these are young activists that have since George Floyd's passing have been convinced that what they always thought. Because remember, these people, dude, we grew up in this community. We're not people that grew up only with like you only grew up with Indians or I only grew up with Hispanics. We both grew up around black people.
yeah,
They're raised to do how many? What are they raised to believe? That they're victims. That white people are crazy and racist. And two, that they should hate cops. I remember we were used to be in high school and people in our class who were Hispanic and black used to say, "Oh, fuck the cops." It's like, what are you saying fuck the cops for? Like, what did they do? What did they do to you? And they say fuck the cops in a town that have a police force that is half Hispanic, half black, with a police chief that's black, with a mayor that's black, with a city council that's all fully black and Hispanic. That's what they do. That's what they're raised to do.
yeah. I
You
know
know that?
I
You
know what
see
you're
it.
saying. It's really annoying. We're not
Yeah.
saying that like all blacks or Hispanics are like that. We know a lot of good
Well, a lot of
black
them
people
are.
and
A
good
lot of them
Hispanic
are. No,
people.
we have to call it out. We have to call it out
But
because this is what
yeah,
they
yeah,
like to do.
we've seen
They're
those
not
kind of
like that.
people.
No,
Yeah,
they are. We've seen it.
we've seen
We've
it.
seen it. That's what they're like. And we keep saying that no, they're not all like that. They'll be Republicans one day. Who gives a shit? They're like that. They're raised because the culture is like that. Rap music. What does rap music pretty much glorify? It glorifies hood culture. What is in the hood? Pathetic people that can't get a job and are stupid and lazy, who can't speak in complete sentences. That's what it is. People who like to do drugs, who like to disrespect women and turn them into the thoughts that they are now. Because that's also another result. And now the men think that's because they've always been like that. No, the culture made them into that. And then third, they hate the cops and they hate authority because they think that they're above it. One, because they're black and they're victims, and second of all, they just don't want to pay attention. It's not racist to say that. It's what we see. It's what we see. It can't be racist to see. If I see black people in Plainfield, the town that we're from, we're not in it, thankfully, but we're from. When we see them, when we see black gang members attack undocumented Hispanics in daylight and attack them at night, innocent Hispanics that are just trying to get from place A to place B, and they're assaulted, and they assault Hispanic women and they like sexually
By
harass
their
them.
own kind.
What are we?
Yeah.
Is that racist? No, no. That's just us seeing what's going on. That's a crime. And when they're predominantly of a certain group, that's not racist. That's seeing that. Oh wait, if I see eight at a time, it's like it's if 8 times out of 10 something happens, that's a trend. If 8 out of 10 times I see you eating pizza, that means you like pizza. That doesn't mean that that's not racist. It's a trend. It's something you do. It's something you like. Not if I see that 60% of crimes are done by African Americans and it's mostly men. What am I supposed to conclude, that it's racism? No. That for most part, African American men are the ones committing most of the crimes. That's not racist to say. It's just a fact. It's what I see. But now you can't say that because of this nonsense. Because all this racial demagoguery that's going on here.
Yeah, people are so uncomfortable with the truth. Yeah.
No, they're so uncomfortable because they see, because the culture and the society around them, especially the government that's supposed to back them, not support them, but back them, is pretty much not allowing them to say these things. And so if you say this on Facebook or Instagram, you'll get put down. If you say this on YouTube, we'll probably get thrown down when we say this. You can't speak truth because it's racist and it's anti-black. I don't give a shit if it's anti-black. Fix your community. If Don Lemon says that only blacks can comment on the community, well, tell me then, what is the problem and what are you doing to fix it? But he won't say that because he can't say that. He can't say there's nothing wrong. He can't say that LeBron James is ignorant and has done nothing and that he's not a victim because then that would eliminate the entire argument that being black is a victim. But he is. But remember, he's not a victim because he has billion. He's a billionaire now, but he has millions and millions of dollars. He can't be a victim. He lives in Brentwood in Los Angeles, where, by the way, not a lot of black people live.
No, no.
He's not a victim.
A lot of white neighbors, and I think he's also married to a white guy, right?
He's married to a white woman. No, a black
No,
woman.
Don Lemon.
Don Lemon? Oh yeah, well Don Lemon is gay. But
Oh yeah, who are you talking about? Oh, LeBron James. No, yeah.
Who gives a shit about Don Lemon? He's gone. He's on his
Don Lemon.
Care about someone with a better job. LeBron James, who says he's a victim and pretends to be this intellectual that he's not, goes out and he says, "Well, he lives in Brentwood, but he's also a victim because he's black and white cops want to kill me every day." He says stuff like that. He says that I'm a black man in America. I should be afraid. Afraid of what?
Afraid of what?
What are you gonna?
He's not even educated like that. Like,
no, he's not educated.
You guys gotta remember, he's not educated like that.
He only went to high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. But if you have a black conservative judge like Justice Thomas, what do they want to do? They want to get rid of him. That's what they want to do. They constantly attack him. Or if you have Thomas Sowell, what do they call Thomas Sowell? Uncle Tom. What do they call Larry Elder? They also call him Uncle Tom. They call him Shill. They call him they want to be white. That's what they call them because they have no logical explanation for the things that are happening.
And a lot of them don't even know what is the Uncle Tom.
No, they don't know anything, dude. They don't know anything. They don't know anything. That's kind of the overall point is that they don't know anything yet they speak. That's why it's all demagoguery because they use emotions and feelings. Like when people say, "Oh, I felt like something racist happened to me," like so I did feel like I had racism in my life because I felt that was racist.
It's like
shut the fuck up already.
It's like a fetish. It's really annoying.
It's a fetish. It is good. That's a good way of saying it. It's a fetish. They want that to happen. It's like they go out and they want something racist to happen to them now. They want to feel like a victim. Oh my god, I'm a victim, please. Oh no. It's pathetic.
A lot of them want to be.
This isn't the last time.
A lot of them want to be the victim, but a lot of them want to be the hero too. But they're doing it in the wrong way.
First of all, it shouldn't be even happening. You know how you can be a hero? When you fix your community, which has huge issues. When black people in your community don't have actual reading levels that are fit for an adult. When they can't speak in complete, I hate people. That's why I hate it. It's like they don't know how to speak in complete sentences. They don't know how to use proper grammar or syntax. Yet they act as if like they're like, oh, we was going out. What? Did you saw what happened? What? They don't know how to say anything. They're uneducated. They're pathetic, and yet they come out here and act like these intellect. They act like they're like Booker T. Washington or like the. That's what they wish they were, or Martin Luther King. They think they wish they were Malcolm X. But they're not. They're pathetic. They don't know anything. And they can't fix anything. And so when they see that, and so when other people outside their community see that these people need help because this can't continue and it's unsustainable, what do they say? Oh, you're racist because that's our culture. You don't have a culture. That's not culture. That's a cesspool of a bunch of different bad qualities. Fatherless homes. Uneducated children, bad diet, a bunch of different qualities. A rap culture, a culture that pretty much subsidizes and encourages women to be baby mamas so that they can get food stamps, EBT, and live in project housing for like $80 a month. That's what. And what do the baby daddies do? Well, they're all about. They're in gangs. They use drugs. They like doing music. They like fucking other women. That's what they do. That's the community. That's the big gist of it. Why do I say that? Not because I read a book. It's because I've seen it.
Yep.
We've seen that.
It's all experience.
We've seen it. We've seen it. But people are afraid to point that out. No, point that out. Point out that in the projects of Plainfield, I've seen women who are on food stamps and get welfare payments, driving fancy cars. They have Mercedes. They have BMWs. They have them tinted out. They have them modded up. They have the brand new iPhones, iPads, but they're oppressed because they're black. Give me a break, man. All right, let's talk about something else.
And if you guys don't like it, you can sniff my dick.
No, no, don't do that. That's too bad. That's there. I think there are less bad punishments.
Like what?
I don't know, having to clean up after Joe Biden.
Okay, fine. You're right.
All right, so let's move on to Ukraine. There was a video that was posted that I saw that there was the Russians pretty much proclaimed that there was a strike against the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. That essentially the argument is that the Ukrainians launched a drone, and this drone was directed to assassinate Vladimir Putin, and mysteriously popped up. It went so close to the Kremlin, nobody picked it up before it got there. But right as it was going over the Kremlin, that's when it was destroyed. But the Russians couldn't pick that up, which is, I guess, hard to believe.
Yeah, I don't
There's a
honestly like. I don't know who to trust anymore.
I don't
I really
there's a
don't
news
like.
yeah, and this is when happening where there's a new spring offensive coming up soon. It should be starting soon, honestly. Um, and the United States has essentially given everything to the Ukrainians. We've given them all types of artillery, anti-missile, anti-tank. We've given
Yeah,
them, I think we're even giving them F-13s,
so
jets.
annoying.
They've received armored vehicles. They're receiving tanks. Um, I mean that we if we go by what that leak happened, I wouldn't be surprised if there's U.S. special troops in Ukraine. There we're also sending M1 Abrams tanks soon. Apparently, there's a timeline to get that there.
Mm.
All these weapons, by the way, being shipped there through Poland. So we're sending it through Poland. Um, Now the Germans are starting to send out planes. Spain is starting to send out Leopard tanks and
Oh, really?
um, yeah, and Challenger tanks and to the Ukrainians. So Europe is starting to set up. Now, I think I can speak for both of us. Maybe you have a slightly more further opinion on this,
Go for
but
it.
I don't think we should have any interest in this.
No, I agree with you with that.
Yeah, and I honestly, Ukraine as a country has existed for really only 30 years. This notion that it was a country for a long, long time is not true. It
Not true.
was Ukraine. And by the way, the Ukraine you see today hasn't been Ukrainian, isn't actually Ukraine. It was Ukraine since 1940 or 1939. So I'm going to pull up a video of what we're talking about and then we can discuss Ukraine. I don't think we discussed Ukraine on this show yet, but it's a perfect time. Let
Yeah,
me
I don't think
share
we
this
did.
video with
Maybe
you.
I think we did. Probably the first or the second episode.
All right, man. So here's this video here of what happened here this week in, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, but what happened here in Ukraine. All right, let's just get it. All right, here it is. There it is right there. Pretty much we'll just show it. It's coming in from here. Um, um,
So nobody shot it down; it just exploded.
no, they shut it down. That's what that was.
I couldn't even. I didn't even see anything that what they used to shut it down.
Well, they're not going to use a big missile. Or what do you think they're going to use? Well, they're just going to shoot
Like
it
I
down.
expect them to use a fucking rifle or something.
It's probably trying to use anti-missile or anti drone technology. Uh, yeah. So the Russians have essentially said that this was designed to assassinate Vladimir Putin. Look, I'm not surprised. I'm sure he has people trying to assassinate him.
Oh yeah.
Um, there are several bad things happening with this Ukrainian war because the story keeps changing. At first, the reason we were sending weapons was why? Well, because they wanted to push the Russians out of Ukraine, out of Ukrainian territory. Now, that's all disputed, by the way, but that's what they said, Ukrainian territory. Then it became that Joe Biden essentially called for Vladimir Putin to be replaced, i.e., well, regime change in Russia, which would be the dumbest idea ever. And then they also they also then announced that Vladimir Putin committed war crimes. Okay, I'm sure he probably has. And Now, what's the argument? Well, the Ukrainians have been conducting these special operations in Russian territory, by the way, but it's not getting reported on by the Western press. You have to hear it from people. Really, you have to get it from journalists on Twitter, which is the unfortunate part because the media can't be dependent on it anymore. So if you look at
Yeah.
independent journalists on Twitter, they're the same people. The independent journalists on Twitter and Substack are the ones that brought out the truth about Nord Stream 2, the truth about the Ukrainian war, where the money's going, what's been going on. They're the only ones reporting on this because the media keeps saying the same thing. Two things: that the Ukrainians need more weapons and money, and two, all at the same time that they need more and more, that they're winning this war. But when we see this leaked Pentagon report, what are they saying? Well, what we already knew because we've heard it from other sources that Ukrainians are being killed. I think to a ratio of 3 to 1. I think it might even be 6 to 1. So 6 Ukrainians dead per one Russian soldier. Also, that the fact that they're having to be trained to use this weaponry. Um, and then what do we know is that remember when the war started, they said that there was essentially this entire a group of Ukrainian soldiers that were veterans and that were highly trained and skilled. They had a specific name to them. I think they were the Kiev something. They're all dead. They're all dead by now because they just have to be. The numbers of the amount of people that are dying in Ukraine. So the skilled soldiers and skilled servicemen in Ukraine aren't there anymore, and these are all just new recruits. All the women have left the country. All the men are stuck fighting
Typical.
a war that they can't effectively win in the long term. Why? Because two things: Russia is far more populous, and so it has way more people. And second of all, it has way more weapons than them. So this idea that the Russians are going to run out of weapons that's not true. It's not going to happen because the Chinese through black markets are going to send them weapons. Russian black weapons dealers are still going to operate because they have places in Africa, South America,
Hmm.
the Middle East, or in Asia where they can weapons. Also, they're also using other countries as conduits, like Belarus. Belarus essentially is the puppet state of Russia. It always has been. It still is. And what are they doing? Well, they're allowing soldiers to run through Belarus and go through the north, or South Belarus and invade from the north. Um, I think what matters more to me, because this is all the war part, is you can all see the maps and where the battles have happened, and they're bloody battles. I mean, they're just flattening the entire country. These are videos of what's going on. I saw some ridiculous people, and so what I hate about the right, the conservatives sometimes, is that the war is fake. It's not real. It's like, no, it's obviously real because they're sending our weapons there. Don't you see the weapons? You can't say that they're sending all the weapons and then say the war is fake.
Right.
That's
Yep.
like say those two. But they justify it by saying that they're sending it to some imaginary, or that do you really think they're sending them? It's like, okay, are you defending them now,
But do you think it's over exaggerated though? Because you've
or exaggerating as in what?
because you've also
Death
noticed
toll? No, I think the death toll is grossly under estimated.
but
I think
also
there's way more people dying.
but also because the media is not showing things that we need to know is what I'm
It's
saying. And
not. That's why,
so it's
because they're
yeah,
not showing the
it's
fact
like they
that we're
don't
losing it.
yeah, exactly.
That's what they're not showing. They're not showing that a lot of Ukrainians are dead. Soldiers, most of them are dying. Remember, they're not telling you that there's a three, or I think it was three. It's worse if it's six, but I think it's a 3 to 1 ratio. Three Ukrainian soldiers die per one. It might be five or six. If it is, I'm sorry for being wrong, but that's worse. I mean, at least if it's three, I'm making it sound better. Six is horrible. But they have a history of it. Remember, when the war started, remember that island in the Black Sea that they said was surrounded by Russians, and the Ukrainians said, fuck you, Russians,
Oh
go
yeah,
home.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then we found out that those guys were actually still alive and that they weren't essentially shot down. The island was essentially ruined, and that where the bunker that they were staring at, the military base they were staying at was effectively destroyed by missiles. That's what they said happened. That didn't happen. What did we see later? Well, those guys were just captured by the Russians. Like, there's these conflicting stories. Um, I'm really concerned because of the rhetoric that's being used. Not because I think Vladimir Putin's going to use nuclear weapons. That's concerning too, but it's mainly as a fault of the United States propagating this war to the fact that it's happened and now it's getting worse and worse, and we keep sending stuff, and now Europe keeps sending stuff, and we have people joining NATO that really don't have to join NATO, like Finland, I think Sweden, I think there's other countries trying to join.
Yeah.
Um, that it's the whole charade going on. What I don't like is when they say we're going to end this war when Ukraine takes back all of its territories. What does that mean? Eastern Ukraine and Crimea. Now they're not taking Crimea back because that's not going to happen. Vladimir Putin's not going to allow it. Also, it's been Russian for several years now, and it had been Russian for centuries before that. I think that's what we don't realize, that we keep saying. Remember, Ron DeSantis took heat because he said it was a border war, but then he changed his position because he's a flip flopper. But in a sense, he's actually right. It is a border war. It's a border. It's a war between what sections does Ukraine? It's essentially a war on, pretty much a conflict on what where the borders begin, where they end. Where does Russia start, and where does Ukraine end? And so I have these photos I want to pull up because people need to get a little educated on what Ukraine actually was and what it has been. Remember, most of Western Ukraine was Polish. It was Polish for hundreds of years. Hundreds. I'm not talking about 1 or 200 years. I'm talking about 5, 6, 700 years. Major cities in Ukraine have been Ukrainian, in Western Ukraine have been Ukrainian since 1939. But they were Polish speaking for centuries before that. I'm talking about Lviv. I'm talking about cities in Lithuania. I'm talking about cities in Belarus. These are essentially countries that were portioned off from former Poland when the Soviet Union, Russia, made a deal with Hitler, and they invaded Ukraine, and they split it up between two. So I'm going to show a map of essentially Poland in 1939 and what that invasion was.
Mhm.
I'm going to pull that up because I think we keep talking about these you know um, borders and territory. This is Ukrainian, that this is Russian, because it's been Russian since 1991. Okay, well, if we're going to follow that logic, that means that all of that's in Polish. Remember, the Russians and the Ukrainians after World War II, they could have given up what they had illegally taken. Why didn't they? Well, because in a meeting with the Allies, when Churchill and the Americans pretty much told Stalin that the Pope won't really like that you keep this territory because there's a bunch of Polish people, and the Polish are Catholic. And he told them, well, the Pope isn't going to really like that because a bunch of his people are under your dominion. And what did Stalin say? How many divisions does the Pope have? What do you think that means? Well, how many men does the Pope have? He doesn't have any. Okay, well, that's it. There's nothing else to be said. Who's going to take it from me? And that was the Allies essentially. So I'm going to pull this photo up so you can check it out. And I'm going to give you a little explanation as to what is right here. You see
So,
this right here?
so pretty much the war with Russia Ukraine is gonna be a really long war. I don't know if Ukraine's gonna take back its territory
No,
again.
no, it's not. So this right here, this is essentially Poland. All right here. This is essentially Poland, pretty much until 1939. This was East Prussia. This was also parts of these were parts of Germany that were taken. So this right here was annexed by the Soviet Union in 1939. Right here. All of this.
Okay.
This town that you see here, which is Polish, Lwów, this is Western Ukraine right here. This right here, Brezhnev, this, and we'll know this is Vilnius, Lithuania. So this essentially here is with Lithuania. Parts of this are Belarus. This essentially is Western Ukraine. This has become Western Ukraine. This was Polish. All of this was Polish.
Mm.
All of this was Polish. This is Warsaw right here. The Germans came up and essentially divided that line when they invaded.
Okay.
So the question is, in these parts of Poland that were Polish for centuries, centuries, and those parts of Western Ukraine were Russian for centuries and centuries. I'm talking about since the 1200s and 1400s, when Ukrainian wasn't really even a term. That's how long there was a Polish Empire, and these were parts. These were actual things that happened, and yet they're saying, well, they deserve to be Polish because they deserve to be Ukrainian because they were Ukrainian since 1991. Okay, well, following that logic again, that's why I'm saying this, because for a long time They weren't. And here's another photo here. Essentially what happened. So this is 1939. This is Germany right here, but it includes the territories they took from the Czechs, the Slovakians, the Austrians, pretty much when they took the Rhineland. This is Poland. This is Poland. You recognize this map?
Yeah.
This is Poland in 1939. What did the Soviets do? Well, they invaded and they took all this territory. Remember, Lithuania used to be essentially a kingdom with the Polish. It was called the Polish-Lithuanian Kingdom or Empire. Poland had all this territory. And Poland was, in the 1500s, 1600s, 1400s, 1200s even, it was a formidable power in Europe. It was a big power. Not like the British and the other ones, but it was a formidable power in Eastern Europe. Germany didn't exist as a country, but it was divided up into different city-states and pretty much different territorial states, kingdoms, that made up a giant federation of German kingdoms. So this was Poland. This is Western Ukraine right here. This is Western Ukraine. Effectively, this is all of Ukraine.
Right.
Today, this is mostly Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania. This is what the Soviet Union annexed in 1945 when the war ended. The Germans essentially said, the Russians, pretty much said, we're not giving that back. This is ours. Who's going to take it from us? The Pope? Okay, bad for the Pope, but this is mine. So they kept all this. So you literally have towns in Ukraine today that for centuries were Polish. Again, I said Lviv. In that, what is it called? Lwów. It probably has a different pronunciation. I'm sorry about it. I can't pronounce Polish. But what's it called? It's called Lviv, which is a Ukrainian town. There's many others. But Poland essentially became a shell of itself. This is pretty much what remains of Poland. I think it's not as large as it was then. It might be smaller. But when we talk about we're going to reconquer borders and we're going to push back the Russians to, I've heard people say 1991 lines. I've seen people say 1941 lines. That's dangerous talk because you're now pretty much saying they're going to push them completely out of territory that has been Russian for a long, long time. Because now you think that that's right. But again, it's not right because that was Polish. So do the Poles come in and say, well, this is ours because for centuries it was mine? Close to 1,000 years even, it was ours. No, they're not going to. And if you did, Zelensky would be really pissed off and say, how dare you give me more money? So there's really no end in sight, and that's the alarming part. You also have another thing is that the United States has been so humiliated by Joe Biden, not Donald Trump, who, by the way, they said Donald Trump would get us into World War III. They said Donald Trump would get us into a nuclear war with North Korea. They said he would embarrass us on the world stage. All of that is happening under Joe Biden, the elder statesman from Scranton, who never existed, by the way. And now what's happening? I think, what did you have? You had essentially Macron in France go to China and say, hey, one, we're not going to get involved in Taiwan, and I'm going to tell the rest of the European Union not to do so, because we're not going to allow the United States to bring us into conflict, which is just being a puppet, a shield to China. And then second of all, what did he say? He said, I implore you to find a way to stop this war. He told China that. He told China, who has now begun sending weapons to Russia. People aren't calling them out yet, and the government won't, but that's what's happening. He's sending weapons to Russia. And so now what's also happening? There's going to be a potential, and Zelensky has also welcomed it. He wants China. He wants China to provide a ceasefire or a peace deal that would end the war in Ukraine.
You think he's going to do that?
Who? The Chinese?
Yeah.
Oh, the Chinese would love to. Because what did I tell you before? I think I told you this off camera. That would be the end of U.S. global hegemony.
Oh, yeah, you did say that.
It would be the end.
Yeah, I remember.
Because we would no longer be allowed to go and tell countries to do certain things, that you should be more democratic, that you should be... Remember, it's been a process. It's not something that Joe Biden came in and it ruined it. It was a process of things adding up. Remember, the world is seeing this. We don't see it from our lens because we're here and we're focused on this, but the world does sees it. They see that when we go to an embassy in South Sudan, or when we go and we have an embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan, what do? We paint the mural of George Floyd on the side of the building, even though they have nothing to do with it. What do? We paint gay flags on their streets. We do that in South Sudan. We do it in Kabul. We do it in South Korea. That's what we do. And then we go and we tell them that, okay, we're going to give you billions of dollars to fund your education system, but you have to teach Afghan kids about gender transitions, transgenderism, feminism, and LGBTQ bullshit. That's what we tell them.
That's
And that you
disgusting.
have to effectively teach feminism. And you have to have degrees at the University of Kabul that are degrees in feminist studies, degrees in transgenderism, degrees in intersectionality, which, by the way, gives nobody employment in anything ever, and also isn't really needed. That's the problem. So the world sees that and says, "Oh, they're giving you dollars, but they're making you gay. They're making you gay, and they're making you woke." And the world doesn't want that because for most of the world, for most of the 8 trillion people on this planet, what do they want? What they worry about is, do I have a job? Can I pay my bills? Can I get food, water? And is my community safe for my family? That's what they worry about. They don't worry about did Ahmaud Arbery get attacked by white vigilantes in the name of black racism. They don't give a damn if Joe Biden had ice cream today. They don't care if AOC thing is offended. They don't care that AOC is putting a bill on the House floor with Matt Gaetz on congressmen, the people members of Congress not trading stocks. They don't give a shit about that. They don't care. They don't, because those are first world problems. What they're worrying about is, is my family and I going to be safe tonight? Are we going to have the opportunity to get food and water for them tonight and tomorrow? What is going on? That's what's going on there. But this is what we do, and so it's a cumulative process that adds up and adds up, and then you couple that with the problems we have at home, where we have low military recruitment. We're really in trouble here, which is why we need to have a massive change in 2024, because we're really in trouble.
Yeah, because I honestly, if nothing's being changed after 2024, I don't think.
Oh, it's over.
Yeah,
It's over. It's over.
we're done pretty much.
Completely. Yeah, it's done. We're gonna have to learn Chinese again and move to China. Yeah, and the left is gonna like that.
I hate it. I hated Mandarin, man. I hated
Yeah, no,
Mandarin.
and we're gonna have to. Yeah, and you're gonna hate it even worse because in China, the left is gonna love it, but you're gonna hate it because in China, they have abortion on demand, even up to 9 months, and they have digital credit. They're gonna love the social credit system. They're gonna love all those things
Oh
until
man.
until the Chinese pretty much tell them, "Oh, I don't care that you're black. You have to go work in the salt mines, and you have to go work in the aluminium fields. Oh, you're black and you like rap. We don't do that here. You have to learn math and you have to know how to read, which these communities don't know how to do either. They can't do math and don't know how to read.
Good luck to them. Holy fuck.
Yeah, good luck to them. So, but this is what's in store for us if we don't do anything, which is why we have to do something. And it's insane because we know, or I know, that the United States prevented a ceasefire in the war of Ukraine in February of last year. Not February, in I believe March or April. Effectively, the U.S. government told Boris Johnson when he went to Ukraine to not engage in any talks of ceasefires or peace deals or treaties with the Russians. That happened. So we
Mhm.
now have a record, and Zelensky knows that, which is why he'll welcome, and because Zelensky's a snake and a rat, he would welcome a Chinese brokered ceasefire. Because he might have some understanding that maybe he'll keep some territories. Maybe he won't keep Crimea, but he'll keep some Western territories. Will
Right.
he have to have a higher delegate count of representatives in the Ukrainian parliament that represent Eastern territories? Yeah, sure. He might. But if it ensures that either he'll stay in power or, better yet, he'll be alive, Zelensky, after this war, because Zelensky's a dead man walking. He has no other way. Either he has to keep the war going until he gets a ceasefire, until he gets two things: a ceasefire with a potential treaty, or he wins the war, or he wins or loses this war. Because he's a dead man walking. That's the only two results he has. He can't walk back. So he's looking for a way out, and if he sees one, he'll take it. If it gives him security, because he doesn't care about anybody but himself. So that's what's going on here. So we're in a huge
We're in deep shit, guys.
yeah, we're in a huge conundrum here because there's no U.S. leadership. Remember,
Nope.
we just saw another example. Sudan just collapsed, and this was Sudan, by the way, was an experiment that the Obama administration committed during his presidency. Those were one of the other wars that he was engaged in. Sudan and South Sudan, not only with Somalia and Yemen, which were
I
bombed
remember
the hell
Yemen.
out of by
Yeah,
Obama, the man who won a Nobel Peace Prize.
I remember that
That
one.
collapsed. Sudan has collapsed. And what do we find that I was at the embassy? Yeah, they had a George Floyd mural. They had gay pride flags. Why? What's the point? And so people get angry at that because they say this isn't our culture. And if you go down into southern Africa and you go deeper to Uganda and you see what they say, oh, we don't like the Americans because they're trying to promote this gay bullshit on us, and we don't like that because that's not our tradition.
And I don't blame them.
And exactly, and you should be in these countries should be free to do that. The Chinese will let them keep their anti-gayness, but they're going to say, hey, you have to give me all your minerals and all the precious metals you find here are mine, and I'm going to mine them, so you have to give me free access. But the Chinese will let them keep their social convention. That's how they play. We need to play that game a little bit because we're not doing that. We don't have smart diplomats. We don't. We don't have smart anythings in our government anymore, and we need them. Because if not, 2030 is going to be more like 2025 when China takes over. They say 2050, 2030. It's going to be 2025 instead if Joe Biden is the president again,
Hmm.
or if Kamala Harris is, if any Democrat is
Oh
the
my
president,
god!
including RFK Jr.
Don't even mention Kamala, man.
Kampala, you don't like her?
Kampala.
Ah,
Who
man. Well,
likes
we're gonna
her?
take our first. I love her. She's hot.
Shut the fuck up.
All right, we're gonna
Stupid.
take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about other topics: Southern border, Kevin Crowder, Jeffrey Epstein, and yeah. But stick with us. We'll be back, and see you then. Hey guys, it's Louis here. When I first met Karen Deep, our friend KD, he told me two things. He said, I'm really passionate about two things, that I'm super gay and I'm a really passionate gamer. And I said, wow. I respected how upfront he was. I said, well, I can respect this. I'm not really a big fan of that first thing he said, but, I can really respect, that he's a gamer. And, over the years, getting to know him even more, I said, wow, this guy's honest. He really was a great gamer. He was right about both things. And so, when he told me, I have this new YouTube channel. It's where I post all my gaming content. I said, you know what? That's a good idea because you're really good, really passionate. And, you guys should really check it out. If you guys are also a fan of gaming or, you want to have a nice time, if you're bored, you say, I want to laugh. I want to see some gameplay. Maybe in the future, we'll do some walkthroughs. I want to see some funny, ridiculous content. Check his account out. His channel is Crimson Gaming. The link's down below in our bio. Really suggest you check it out. You're really going to enjoy it. I really think so. And I hope you guys stick with us as we come back to the next part of our show. See you then.
Welcome back, guys. Hope you guys went and did your pee break and your poop break.
What?
Uh,
What is that? Oh, Lord.
so we want to discuss about the Title 42 that's expiring at May 11th. May 11th, correct?
Yeah, it's expiring on May 11th.
So what do you think is going to happen during that day?
Well, we're only like a couple days away. So there's already like reports of like huge buildups of people trying to get in before that. I think I don't think the media does a good job at explaining what Title 42 is. Title 42 is just a statute that allows the government to remove people if there's a virus, a communicable disease in a country. So, for example, if we declare there's a communicable disease, COVID, in Guatemala or El Salvador or Panama, what we do is that we remove people from our country who come from those places and take them back. Don't mistake that with the Remain in Mexico policy under Donald Trump, because that's what actually made the country safer, or less people coming in. Where we pretty much were close to having close to really net zero illegal migration over our border. Remember, the wall was being built, and the wall, because there's also political stuff going. Well, this is all political, but there's also like electoral politics into play here because you have Republicans on the Republican side who haven't announced yet that are saying that if they get in, they would actually build the wall. When it's kind of misleading people. The wall was getting built. It's not Trump sabotage that. It's not Trump that stopped it. It's that the Democrats stopped it. And let's not pretend that they would get it done instead of Trump. When first of all, the idea was Trump's in the first place. to build a new wall that would actually keep people out. And that wall is pretty much incomplete because of the administrative state. Remaining policy, the remaining Mexico policy is the one that ought to have been continued. What does that mean? Remaining Mexico policy means that when you come to the border, you can petition for asylum, but you have to wait in Mexico or the country of your origin to do so. So if you're coming up from Guatemala or El Salvador and you come to the border and seek asylum, it's not like before that where you could just waltz in and then wait for your court date. You have to wait outside of the United States for your court date. It's a fair process. Why is it fair? Because if you're in India or Colombia or Egypt or Belgium or the Europeans have it differently, but or in South Korea, what do you have to do if you want to get to this country? You have to file for a visa. And so you have to get in line and you have to wait for your visa appointment after you fill out all the paperwork and you file the fees and you get all your medical tests done. If you want a visa to come in, you have to file paperwork and wait in line. That's the expression where you keep hearing, oh, but the people are legally waiting in line. That's where it comes from. Because these people, what they do is that they just come in and they don't care. They're already here. Why would they go back for a court date if they're here already?
Right.
So it's so stupid. Like what? I mean, you have a court date. You tell them, okay, come back on March 10th. They're not coming back on March 10th, but they're in wherever the hell they are. You know, they're in Plainfield eating baleadas. Like that's what they're doing. And so that's the actual piece of legislation that's important. Title 42 is just a statute. You can reactivate it, inactivate it in times of pandemics if we have them in the future. Hopefully not. Or if there's a disease that these people have, if there's an outbreak, let's say if there's a Lyme's disease outbreak in Guatemala and your Guatemalans coming over, well, you can remove them because of that. That's always going to be there. That's not illegal. It's just ending because the pandemic is over essentially, and that's okay. It's going to end. The problem isn't that, because I hear conservatives saying, "How dare they not enforce it?" The enforcement should be remaining Mexico policy and not letting people get in. The problem is it's too late. Because it's over 2 years and there's already over 6 million people apparently reported that have entered the country illegally. Way more than that have come in during Trump. Way more, I believe, than came in Obama's first term or the George Bush administration. Way more. I mean, 6 million people, that's a lot of people coming in.
It is a lot, yeah.
It is. And that's why we mentioned it in the first segment when we talked about Jordan Neely, we talked about race relations. I mentioned the Great Replacement Theory. People are cynical in this country, especially now. They ask them, why is the government allowing the entry of 6 million people into our government? And if I point that out, why am I being targeted? Why can't I question that? That's the problem people get. So they have this cynicism and they say, well, it must be because they want to replace the electorate. Bingo. Why else do they want to? Why else are they trying to give people in New York City, which they I think did already, or in Texas along the border? Why do they want to give people who will have no papers the right to vote? Well, because since they can't give them paperwork, a path to citizenship, and they don't really care that people are citizens anyways, and that term has just become extremely eroded and destroyed for the past 25 years. What do? They're going to give them the right to vote. Why? Because they want greater numbers, because they know these people are most likely going to vote for the Democrat. Because I mentioned this, I think, last episode. If these people were Cuban, if these people were from El Salvador, where they are, and they haven't, the Salvadorians might be the first ones to flip towards the Republican just because of how their country is. What I don't like is the fact that they're trying to say that El Salvador is better than America. Let's hold up right there. They've done this once for the first time. I love it when a country that has a government is finally acting responsible as they should. The people there actually think that now that they're now the best country in the world. It's like, okay, you're doing what you should do. It's like a chef making food. Okay, congrats. That's what you should be doing.
Right.
Like, what am I congratulating for? It's like a pilot. Oh, I safely landed this plane. You're trained to do that. You should be doing that. I shouldn't be overly enjoyed because you landed it. It's like this is part of the process of your job. And so now that's.
But even with Title 42, was still on. People were still coming in, knowing the fact that COVID was a huge thing around 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But nothing was being done.
And remember, they used to come in, and remember, we used to say, like, well, they're not vaccinated, they're not being tested. Why do we have to be vaccinated? Why do we have to be tested whenever we want to go somewhere?
Yeah, that's one thing I don't get, because you mentioned the other diseases, but it's like they were still letting people in regarding they had COVID.
Yeah, they don't care. That's the thing. I only mentioned that as an example of that. That's why this Title 42 exists, because it can come back, but there's just no point for it. The point is that they're not enforcing the border anyways, and that the policy that we should care about is the remain in Mexico, which it isn't Title 42, because people I think are confusing the two. Don't do that. There's one is remain in Mexico, which was the Trump one, which ended the mass immigration that we saw pretty much over time, over the several months, ended it. And then Title 42 came in during the pandemic. That's another one. And
Okay.
it continued until now. And by the way, they've been wanting to get rid of it. But like you just said, is that even with it, they're still letting people come over.
Yeah.
And they're still demonizing ICE. Remember, people have forgot that they pretty much accused of ICE of being a Kamala Harris did when she was a senator. She pretty much likened ICE to the Gestapo. She compared them. She said, they're the Gestapo. I'm like, okay, well, where's the label? And then remember,
Oh
what did they
man.
say with and then remember, the Biden administration has been pretty much demonizing ICE and the Border Patrol and the entire border in existence. Remember what they did with the Haitians? They said they're trying to whip
Oh yeah.
no Haitians at the border. Your first question would be, why are there Haitians at the border? I thought they were just Hispanics.
Right.
Is everybody crossing the border? And then the other thing that we don't talk about is the fentanyl. All the drugs crossing over the border that are coming from China, and the Mexican government is essentially allowing them. The Mexican government, by the way, is not our friend. Mexico is not our friend. The president of Mexico is not our friend. He's eagerly overjoyed that there's 6 to 7 million new people in his country that might get the right to vote illegally and are going to vote, and he's telling them to vote for the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
He's telling them to not vote for Republicans. He's essentially saying that Republicans are racist and anti-Mexican and anti-Hispanic, and you should vote for Democrats because they're going to keep doing this filthiness.
That's how you know it's all politics.
It's all politics. But it's beyond politics too, because it's all ideological. He's glad that there's a new constituency that is becoming larger and larger, and that is the Mexican American Hispanic vote that's becoming larger and larger. The problem is if the Hispanic vote becomes red, it all flips on them.
Yeah.
Which is why they don't like Cubans, which is why they don't like Nicaraguans, which is why they don't like South Americans for the most part, because many of them that are here aren't really in favor with the left leaning. Now, the South American countries have become left leaning over the years, over the last pretty much decade. They're re-socializing, I guess you could call it. They're becoming socialist countries again. Remember, you have Lula da Silva in Brazil now. The Fernandez in Argentina are socialists. The idiot who's the president of Chile is a socialist. Bolivia has a socialist. Colombia has a socialist. Venezuela has a socialist dictator. This is all happening across the continent. So you don't have a lot of friends, but the voting group is becoming redder. Remember, you saw 2016 and 2020, they made massive gains in Hispanics nationwide. We had pretty much odd things happening. Remember, in 2020, Trump won Hispanic votes in the Bronx. He didn't win them over, but he won a surprising amount of new votes of Hispanics in the Bronx.
Wasn't over I think in general, wasn't it like 30% over?
I think it was like 30-something%.
Yeah. Pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And when people like John McCain and Mitt Romney and George Bush weren't getting any of those votes.
Oh.
Trump did that. But now they're saying it's Ron DeSantis, which is another joke. And so that's the problem with the border. It's the enforcement. I mentioned it, I think, an episode ago. What do we have to do at the border? You should go and check that out. But what we have to do is enforce it. Finish a wall. Fund the ICE. And essentially, remain in Mexico policy should become federal law in Congress. You get that through Congress and you make it law where asylum seekers have to wait for their asylum date out of the United States. Not in, out. Because if they come in, what's the point? They're already in. They don't really care.
Mm.
They don't care about asylum status. What they want is to be in. People don't get that. They don't care about asylum. They care about being here. Asylum is just a means to an end. So that's the point. Is it going to happen? No, because Joe Biden doesn't care. Joe Biden. First of all, Joe Biden isn't conscious enough to even care or know what's going on. He's just a puppet. He's a tool. The people around him are the ones that are doing this. So he's going to pretend, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, because he's getting impeachment calls, is now starting to pretend that he cares about the border, but he doesn't, because this is ideological for them. They need this. What they do want is ethnic change across the country. That's why they started sending out immigrants to places like Montana, Idaho, Nebraska, Iowa, Tennessee. Why? Because they have a lower count of Hispanics, and they want to get them to vote somehow, and they're going to do it. They're going to do it by the election. I really do think if Joe Biden's failing enough, they're going to get those people to start voting, and that might flip the change. Remember, Arizona is no longer a red state. People think it's purple. It's not. Yeah. I think it's a blue state. All the people in California have moved to Arizona, and they're still voting blue because they're stupid. And so they're going to vote blue again. They're going to vote blue again. They have 2 Democratic senators, and they have a Democratic governor. I don't like this thing where people say, it's good it's stolen. People have to recognize the people who leave California aren't conservatives. There are a lot of liberals leaving, too. Do they get red-pilled later? Some of them, but not most of them. They're just moving out because they don't like... First of all, they're cowards, so they're not community... They're not really civic nationalists like I am, where I stay in my community and I want to improve it. Or a lot of people who stay and want to improve it. What do? The first thing they see something they don't like? Oh, they just, if they're in New York, they move to Florida. If they're in California, they move to Arizona, or they end in Florida. It's like Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin's in California. He's wealthy, so he can leave. He's in Florida now, and he says that Ron DeSantis is the greatest thing since Jesus. It's kind of stupid. Why don't you just stay there and have a change? Joe Rogan, a liberal, leaves California, a state he probably voted blue in, and now he's in Austin, Texas, which has become another blue cesspool. These people don't stay and improve things. All they do is criticize and critique and then say, well, I'm wealthy, I can leave. No, we can't have that. We have to have is people staying in the communities and fixing it. If you see that there's a rise in homelessness, blame the politicians who allow it and condone it. If you see mass immigration and you don't like it, we have to vote out the people, the senators, and the president who condones it. That's part of the solution. And actually enforce the border and finish a border wall. Not this joke of, well, now we're going to enforce the border. It's 6 million people. What's the point?
Well, I gotta say, man, hopefully that 1,500 troops that Biden's sending should do a little bit of whatever. But
remember, he also said that the border was secure. So why is he sending 1,500 troops?
Yeah.
That's the crazy part. Why? If he said the border's secure, why are you sending 1,500 people over there?
Maybe it's just a case situation.
Just in case.
But nah, man. Real quick, since we're short on time, I do want to mention about the case of what's going around with Jeffrey Epstein. So the CIA director, William Burns,
current CIA director.
Yeah, and I think he used to work with Obama at the time, right? The White House counsel.
He was a deputy secretary of state under Obama, and he was and now he's the CIA director under Biden. It's not just him; it's a bunch of people. Apparently, so his calendar is getting leaked out. His business calendar. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, apparently he had 3 meetings with Epstein during 2014, I believe.
In 2014.
So what do you think is gonna happen? Do you think that they're gonna slowly release the other names who are pretty big? Because I think to be honest with you, I think me and you kind of know who's already in that list, but they really don't want to say it at all.
There's names we want the good names because William Burns is this guy. There's a big job, but we want the big names because this guy is just. I think what
nobody even knows him. I don't even know him.
I think what stands out about this is we have to recognize the enormous network that Jeffrey Epstein had. He was talking to everybody who was famous, not just in politics and not just in Wall Street. Everybody. So on the calendar, there's names like Jeffrey. There's not Jeffrey, obviously. Names like Jeffrey Epstein. There's names like Woody Allen. He met with Woody Allen, and he had several meetings with Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky, the hero of the progressive left. For some reason, he's now a mega intellectual, even though he's just a linguist.
Mm-hmm.
But people admire. I've seen some of his movies. His movies are pathetic. He just blames it on the same thing. He says, he just blames every problem in America on capitalism. It's capitalism and it's greed. That's his whole shtick. So I pay no attention to him.
There's also another
surprising that he, out of all people, met with Jeffrey Epstein. But what did he say? It was so funny because now the progressives are now being forced to defend that, but they can't because remember someone asked him, why did you meet with him? And he said it's none of your damn business.
It's gonna look super bad if you're trying to defend that person. If that person had met Jeffrey Epstein, like does it like many
it's
times.
bad if the guy who met him is defending himself by saying that's my privacy. You don't need to know. Remember, that's what Noam Chomsky just said. Noam Chomsky just said what I just said. He said that it's none of your business who I meet with and why.
It doesn't matter who I visit, okay?
Remember, what did Bill Gates say on that meeting with, I think it was Anand or BBC, I think. What did he say to the lady who asked him? He met with him several times. What did he say? Well, it doesn't matter because he's dead.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it does matter because he's a renowned pedophile. And by the way, the day 2014, you might say, well, what does it matter? It's 2014 and it's William Burns. Why does it matter that these people aren't that famous? I don't care. Well, they don't matter to you because maybe you don't look them up, but they matter because they at the time and in the future, they're in key positions of power. So Deputy Secretary of State is a huge job. It means you're the number 2 person at the Department of State, which is an international department. It has authorities and responsibilities across the globe, across the United States' reach, which is across the globe as the global superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Why does the date 2014 matter? Because it was in 2011, or was it between 2008 and 2011, where Jeffrey Epstein was officially charged as a sex offender.
Yeah, around that
time.
He
was registered as a sex offender.
Right.
And he was charged for being a pedophile. What does that tell you? Connect the dots. I'll do it. That means people in key positions of power and people who have influential positions or are influential or have a higher status were meeting willingly and eagerly with a registered sex offender to discuss what they call business, but we also don't know what that business is. It also reaffirms the theory that Jeffrey Epstein was an asset to the CIA, which I believe is full stop. Because there's no reason a guy like him, with a very odd background in the 90s, becomes this famous. Well, not this famous. He becomes very recognized in higher circles, in power circles. So not to us, but in those circles, he's well known. They'll say, "Oh, Jeffrey Epstein, the financier, the man who can give you money." I remember it was Andrew Huberman who was on Joe Rogan's podcast. I think he's a psychologist, and he pretty much answered the question as to, he didn't meet with Epstein, but he knows people who did, and he answered the question, well, why do people meet with Epstein? It's well because Epstein's a guy who will give you $5 million on the spot to do experiments because he wants the name brand, because he's building the brand, and those scientists will get $5 million to do one experiment, which the government will fund them to do in about 3. And they don't have to go through the bullshit of doing it. All they have to do is have dinner with this guy and talk and have conversation and maybe do the guy a favor if they need one later on.
That's crazy.
So they're not having sex with children all the time, but they are doing favors for the man. They're giving him outlets to other people in power. The reason is why? That we won't know. So the reason we get all these names, it's interesting because it tells us the people he's doing with. I have a list. It's a Wall Street Journal article. I don't know if I'm going to post an article here, but there's also names. There's Terje Rod Larsen, who was a Norwegian diplomat. Why does it matter? Well, because he was the president of the International Peace Institute until 2020, and he received a loan from Jeffrey Epstein in over $600,000 in donations from Epstein for the nonprofit.
Jeez.
He met with Ariane de Rothschild, who, I'm not even going to go down the Rothschild rabbit hole. I went down that one. Do it on your own time. I recommend it. But remember, the Rothschild group is one of the most wealthiest families in the world. The Rothschilds effectively govern the Federal Reserve banking system across the globe. That's what they do. The Rothschilds are an extremely influential group. I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to be tagged as being a conspiracy theorist or anti-Jew, because that's what happens with these people.
Nothing wrong with that.
She's the CEO of the Rothschild Group, which managed a $25 million contract with Epstein in 2015 for one of his companies, the Rothschilds. In 2019, when he was arrested, what did she say? She said, well, she never met with him and they had no links with him. But then now they just acknowledged to the Wall Street Journal that wasn't true, what they said. She actually met with Epstein on a normal basis from 2013 to 2019. That's insane.
That's crazy. What the hell?
And so then the Pritzker family met with him several times at his townhouse in Chicago. Who are the Pritzkers? Well, the Pritzkers are the people who run the Hyatt hotel system. Hyatt hotels?
I think I heard that. Yeah,
Have you heard of them? Well, there's a big hotel group. Pritzker. Do you recognize the last name?
I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember the last name.
Pritzker is the Chris Christie of the Democratic Party, the
Mhm.
governor of Illinois. Now, he didn't meet with Epstein, but his family member who runs the hotel business did, because they're a very wealthy and politically connected family in Chicago or Illinois.
Oh my god.
So they met with the Pritzkers, Democrats. Barnaby Marsh. Oh yeah, this guy. He was an executive at the John Templeton Foundation. Have you heard of the name Templeton before?
Oh,
Well, this John Templeton Foundation is a charity fund. Epstein met with them. And what does Mr. Marsh do? Mr. Marsh was a person that advised very, very wealthy people on how to manage their money and how to give them advice on being philanthropists, so giving donations to people. Effectively, this guy pretty much was an outlet for Mr. Epstein to know more famous people. That's just another name. And then, who else did he meet? Bill Gates. We all know that he had, Bill Gates spent 6 hours with Jeffrey Epstein in 2014. He also went to the island. He met with Bill Gates at his New York townhouse. Remember, his ex-wife, Bill Gates' ex-wife, pretty much said that Jeffrey Epstein was one of the darkest people that she ever met. And essentially says that there was a big regret to do that. Too late, you did it.
Did she also like question why Bill Gates keep?
She also questioned why, but remember that's also an ex-wife. I mean, maybe there's marital issues involved as to why that's happening, but nonetheless, she did say he was one of the craziest people she's ever met. Also, she just felt bad vibes. So yeah, no, these are people. Noam Chomsky met with him in 2015, 2016. Chomsky, I mentioned them already, but those are the times. When here's the email, I'll read the email. It's quote: first response is that it's none of your business or anyone's. Second is that I knew him and we met occasionally. So, and then there's another. If there was a flight, which I doubt, it would have been from Boston to New York, 30 minutes. I'm unaware of the principle that requires that I inform you about an evening spent with a great artist.
Mm-hmm.
That's because Epstein planned to fly Chomsky and his wife to have dinner with Woody Allen and Woody Allen's wife, Suyin Previn, in like 2015. Apparently, so that's the two responses. But the first thing is that he says it's none of your business, which is the worst thing to say.
Yeah.
And then William Burns, the current CIA director in 2020 and 2014, have 3 meetings scheduled. Now, Burns says that he only met with him because he felt that it was very important to meet people that were well connected with finance. That's Burns saying that of Epstein, which is, you could, if you're gullible, you'll follow it, but no. President of Bard College, which is I think a women's university, Leon Bolstein, met with Epstein about 4 years, had about 24 meetings with Epstein
crazy.
over a 4-year period. Mr. Bolstein also invited Epstein, who brought a young group of young female guests to the campus. Mr. Bolstein said he first met at Epstein's townhouse in 2012 to thank him for $75,000 in unsolicited donations to Bard's high schools, and then returned over several years in an attempt to get more donations. That was my relationship to get more money, essentially. So, that looks black. That looks bad. Leon Black is the billionaire co-founder of the Leon. No, he's the co-founder of the Apollo Group. Pretty much is like a management company. They do private equity, and so
I think I heard of that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, he met with him. It says here over 100 meetings scheduled with Epstein from 2013 to 2017, and they were typically at Epstein's townhouse and occasionally at Mr. Black's office.
Okay. Yeah. That's
All right. Yeah. Okay. The first one is Ehud Barak, who was the former prime minister of Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and he met with him and flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane.
I've heard about that.
Dozens of times between 2013 and 2017. Between that period, they met at least 36 times. In 2014, he met Epstein at his Palm Beach manor, and then they flew together to Tampa. That sounds great. And they were just they were very close, very close.
I think
But what does he say? He says that in retrospect, Epstein seemed to be a terrible version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yeah, funny. But at the time, it seemed to be an intelligent person who was socially well connected. Well, that was the point. That was the point of why he had to be that way. So this is the point of the calendar. It's not to say that put all these people in jail. Yeah, sure. But also, we also need to realize the amount of people he was with, but also we need to remember we have to answer the question. The question is why? And why was it that important that he had all these meetings with all these people? Why? That's the point. And I think if we and it's good that things keep coming up, but there's more important details. What is Ghislaine? We need the log of people who entered the island. We need the people who went there and the people who met at his townhouse. A calendar is very important because it shows meetings. Can a
yeah.
calendar be edited? Sure, it can. It can be tampered with, but still, these are important names to know. We do know he met with Prince Andrew before he got arrested, before Jeffrey got arrested. Remember, they walked
Right.
around Central Park. We know he had several meetings with Bill Clinton. So these are things we're going to know. Over time, we'll know them because over time, what they do is they leak and leak and leak, try to effectively soften the blow. Because if you know enough over time, once you finally know the truth, they think this is according to their idea, you won't get as mad. But it's like, try it, just try it. I do want to know. Go ahead. I do want to know who was going to this island doing what. It's insane. This is another conspiracy theory that we were once again proved to be right about. And this won't be the last one. So that's another review. It's a bad look for all these people who just try to justify it and say, "Oh, well, I just wanted to get money from him." It's like, yeah, but you do know he was a sex offender, right? And a pedophile.
I'm pretty sure they knew like way long before. Like it can't be like
No,
oh
no, no,
I
no, no. They
didn't know.
knew. They
Yeah,
knew.
like
They knew.
it's
And remember, that's the danger of when you're rolling in these high income in these circles is that maybe at a party Jeffrey Epstein's going to be there. So can you really not go to a party because Jeffrey Epstein's there? Maybe you don't know he's going to be there, and so then you're introduced to each other. Coerced, not because you're forced to,
yeah.
but
Maybe you're
at
just there
a
just to
party.
have fun. You're not there just to meet up Jeffrey Epstein, not knowing that you didn't know he was there. But
Exactly. Let's say I'm at a party done by one of the Rothschilds, right? And Jeffrey Epstein just happens to be there because he was also invited. Now I'm not going to know that, but he's there, and all of a sudden now I'm hanging out with him, you know. But it's not. But you shouldn't have the response Chomsky had and say, "Well, it's none of your business." That's what you can't say.
I think one group of people, or should I say, this one, that I'm very. I think. I mean, we already know like who it is, but Bill Clinton, obviously. I
Yeah,
wonder if
Bill
he's.
Clinton, Prince
I
Andrew.
feel like he's the one that's gonna be the most protected
Yeah, because he's
for
the
sure.
president, and
Yeah.
unless you're Donald Trump,
Well,
remember?
they can't say anything about Donald Trump because if they said that Donald Trump did some stuff with Jeffrey Epstein, they would have said something in the media by now.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying for a while now. And remember,
Like,
when
yeah,
Ghislaine was on trial, they asked him specifically about Donald Trump, and the pilot was a witness and said, "Yeah, Donald Trump was there, but he didn't do anything." Remember, because
so
there's several cases going on. Remember, one of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking went to court and brought the pilot of the plane on as a witness, and the pilot and she are pretty much alleged. Remember, they say he wasn't on the island, but he was around Jeffrey Epstein for a time. Remember, I think this was before the indictment in Florida by the West Palm Beach prosecutor, who turned out then to be the the future Secretary of State under Donald Trump, Alex Acosta.
mhm.
He resigned over that, by the way. Alex Acosta. He was a prosecutor that they made the deal with Jeffrey Epstein, Hispanic, unfortunately, and so that was the time around Donald Trump, I think, ended his relationship, and also because I think, according to him and other people, people at Mar-a-Lago, the women at Mar-a-Lago were complaining that Jeffrey Epstein was harassing them sexually, and so that was a problem. And then he kicked them out because of that. Apparently, that's the last straw. Um, so again, that case happened, and they pretty much said that Donald Trump used to be around him before the case, and then he just didn't want to associate himself with Jeffrey Epstein anyways after that.
Yeah,
And then But they also allege that he was never on the island and that he never was around what the other people were around. So they say that. They do say that. And so that's kind of why they're having a difficult time. They want to. So if Donald Trump's name was on this calendar, they would have put it front page headlines.
Yeah,
Donald Trump was
yeah,
on this
exactly.
calendar. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. They just want him to be there. Remember, Donald Trump was in the New York scene. So he's what did I just say? If someone's at a party and he just shows up to the party, doesn't mean you're going with him or you're going because he's there. You're going there and he just so happens to be there. You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it is. But people ignore that fact for a while because it's politically convenient. So remember, it's all politics at the end of the day, and it's all for power.
Well, hopefully, something good happens in the future. Probably won't, but
No, there's no cases. This is just an article.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So it's done. He's dead. Like Bill Gates said, he's dead. I mean, I don't see the point in talking about someone. Remember, he said, he's dead. So
Yeah, he just
But
he just wants
lying.
to like brush it under the rug. pretty
Yeah, that's
much.
what he's doing. Yeah, that's what he said. Well, he's dead, so I don't really see the point in talking about someone that is dead.
Well, Maxwell's gonna be there soon. We do have to wrap it up though. Hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday. Well, Sunday in our time.
Well, we're doing this on Sunday. This is going to be released afterwards. So, yeah, no, thank you for listening and
Yep.
tuning in. Again, you can check us out everywhere you get your podcasts. If you're listening to us on our audio edition, on Spotify, Apple, Samsung Podcasts, I see we have a following there. So, shout out to you guys. Hope you guys tell your friends, share us where you can. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And we're going to be putting out stuff very soon on our Patreon. So check that out as well. It's patreon.com/for the Republic, the number 4, the Republic. Check us out there. And Carrie, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to plug?
Stay racist, guys. That's pretty much it.
And stay black. All right, that's the final message for you guys. Thanks for joining us. Hope you guys. Thanks for listening, guys.
Take it easy.